I would like very much to expand a little bit about your idea of a G0 world. What does it mean, and what are or what could be the consequences and implications from Brazil and Brazil's insertion in a globalized world?
Well, a G0 world is a world without global leadership. Since World War II, we have international institutions that were created by the United States, the World Bank, the IMF, the United Nations, the Bretton Woods Accord on Currency, the World Trade Organization, American institutions. With American power, when we talk about the international community, we were talking about the advanced industrial democracies, all countries that smell a lot like the United States, right? I mean, economically and politically. Well, we're now in an environment after the 2008 financial crisis where some of the biggest economies in the world are not advanced industrial democracies. They're emerging markets, China in particular, which is not a free market economy. It's not a democracy. It's state capitalist, it's authoritarian. A very different idea of how the world should work. The Americans no longer want to play the role of global policemen. They don't want to be as active internationally as they have historically. And the Europeans are very focused internally. The Europeans, of course, are also being led by Germany, not by Britain or France, so less geopolitically oriented, more economically, more bilaterally. All of those things bring us to G0. And a G0 is a world where you no longer have US-led global institutions. You either have global institutions that don't have leadership and so don't work, like on climate, for example, or the Doha round, or you have smaller groupings that can work and do have leadership, they're just not global. And that's important for Brazil because some of the institutions that are now being developed exclude Brazil. The Trans-Pacific Partnership and the TTIP are the most important international trade units now being developed, and they are going to close, but Brazil's not a part of it because they aren't considered like-minded. Brazil's a part of Mercosur. That's going to be a bigger liability for Brazil going forward. NATO is becoming stronger as an organization in reaction to Russia and Ukraine. The G7, of course, becoming stronger because the G8 is now no more. Brazil's not a part of these organizations. Brazil is a part of the BRICS, but you don't want a strong BRICS in opposition. I mean, the BRICS were nice because, well, you're one of the big emerging markets, which is fine, as long as that can still be integrated with the West. But if it starts looking somewhat like a bloc structure, that's very bad for Brazil. So this becomes a very interesting period of geopolitical creative destruction where the Brazilians, who have not wanted to play a very active role in the foreign policy stage at all, with some exceptions, locally, Lusophone, Portuguese-speaking Africa, is suddenly going to have to think much more clearly about its strategic foreign policy orientation in the world, something that I don't see the Brazilians doing right now. But your organization is, which is very important.
We're trying to understand what's coming up.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, as I think that I told you before, Brazil is a very important country, which is characteristic of countries with large territories and populations. I think the United States, foreign policy in the United States is not something that the average American has as a priority subject.
Absolutely.
Likewise, in Brazil, it's the same, with an addition that Brazil is not a global actor. So foreign policy, if you look at the presidential campaign in Brazil here, they dedicate perhaps half paragraph to it.
Yeah.
But the fact is, in a globalized world, what it does mean by international chains of production, international economy, Brazil is having to open up, like it or not.
Yes.
And that's the challenge that we have.
Yes.
Some people in Brazil think that globalization is a value they could be against or in favor of. But it's not the case. It's a fact of life. It's the world is changing at a considerable speed these days, and we have to change with the new world.
Especially because Brazil is very different from the BRICS. All right? I mean, Brazil is more free market as an economy than the other BRICS. Brazil is more advanced in terms of rule of law. The investment class, the business class in Brazil is very oriented towards the United States and a more free market model. And so as a consequence, if we see the emerging markets growing stronger but more integrated, it's very important for Brazil to be able to balance that against its relationship with the United States.
Well, I heard the other day that Brazil is the only BRIC country because Russia is too energy dependent to be a member of BRIC. China is too big. India has a number of problems internally, and South Africa is too small. So the only country qualified to be a member of an emerging market would be Brazil.
That's funny. I mean, I think clearly Brazil is the country that if you have to make a long-term bet on and you're risk averse, Brazil's the brick you bet on. And we're political risk analysts, but this is our first office that we've opened in the emerging market world is in Brazil. Why? Because we need rule of law, we need stability, we need a large economy, and we also need an investment class that does work at an international level. Well, that just doesn't, all of those things don't exist in all other places. Now, China's too big, but that's an issue, right? Because China's influence over Brazil, China decides that they want to have a BRICS bloc. It will be hard for Brazil to resist. And if they do resist, there will be costs. So on the one hand, it's extremely important and in Brazil's interest that China does not make that incumbent on Brazil. On the other hand, there's very little Brazil can do to influence that outcome. And I think that's one of the reasons why what's presently happening in the world in the geopolitical creative destruction of the old order and on issues like Russia relations with the West are suddenly of very great importance to Brazil.
But, well, that's all the challenges that we have to face.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much, Ian. It has been a pleasure and an honor for us to have you here.
Oh, thank you very much, sir.